Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, What the Beck. Today I'm going to show you the yarn dyeing adventure I went on with my sibling, and we're just going to get started by putting some yarn into a hank. And basically to do this you can use a Swift. I had to borrow one from the library, so I started by just putting it around the chair. Here's my cat coming to check things out. And then I just was using store-bought wool yarn for this. Made of 100% wool because that will attach to the dye easier. I also tried to tie some bits of acrylic yarn on it in different spots to kind of give it a resist because I'm going for like a galaxy look. Then I soaked it in some water for about 20 minutes just so it could get fully soaked up. Then we took another cup of hot water and put some food dye in it. That should be good. Yum. Delicious goop. And I was using the recipe from ChemKnit's tutorial, and it actually was a lot, and I kind of wish I had used a little bit less, but I was following the directions because it was my first time. So I went ahead and stirred the dye and dye water into the pot with the 6 cups of water, and then we added 1 tablespoon of vinegar to that. Then it was time to put the yarn into the dye water, which went a little something like this. Whoa! It's pink! So we just kept doing this dip dye method, meant to break the dye is what it's called. So as you can see, the pink is at the top and it is dripping the blue dye down below. And this is some type of scientific truth where the pink dye will always stick to the yarn at a lower acidity than the blue. So the purple is kind of breaking into the 2 colors that it's made out of. Look how pink it is! Look like you hairs. The acrylic yarn that I tied on it to be a resist is like also turning colorful, which I did not expect. But I guess maybe when we wash it, it might not stay. And once the pink was all stuck to the yarn, the water definitely looks blue now. So once the portion of yarn we wanted to be purple had absorbed all the pink in the pot, we went ahead and added another tablespoon of the white vinegar. And that raised the pH of the water so that it would attach the blue dye to the yarn. Whoa! And here was our first dilemma. Oh, should I leave some of it? I don't know if I want to leave that big of a white spot.
I think you should leave some white because I don't think that it's... I think where you tied it, it's not white.
And so our first dilemma was over. So we attached the yarn to the tongs and just let it sit there for a while, following the instructions in the ChemKnit's video, which you can find linked below. And then it wouldn't be a What the Beck video without some rainbow, so we decided to go a little rogue and try to make our own rainbow yarn. We prepared this yarn in a similar way, but instead of putting the vinegar in the dye pot, I put it into the bath that it was soaking in. Because for this method, you actually heat it in the oven. Not drop this into the spaghetti noodles. So we needed that vinegar in there so that the blue would stick where we put it and such. But you'll see later that this didn't really turn into a rainbow. It became more of a green with some pink and blue, but it still turned out pretty good. We went ahead and used these Wilton dye. Jiggle it. Just because they're easy to get your hands on and they have lots of colors and they're safe to use in your baking pans. So we went ahead and jiggled it and mixed the colors together, trying to keep them somewhat separate, which didn't really work. Since then I have got a bunt pan for dyeing rainbow yarn, and it works much better because there's the little piece in the center that prevents them from spreading too much. Like that, which I'm pretty sure that was the point of no return for this yarn. The middle just got too dark green and didn't want to be yellow anymore, and the red turned into brown and not the best color. So it was okay if it wasn't perfect, but I wanted any yarn that was in there to be getting some dye, so I was kind of poking around in the pan, making sure the dye could get to all the yarn in there. Then we put that to the side so that we could work on another yarn. The color scheme for this one is inspired by my Shumbo fursuit, and this is a Royal Grandma mixed with Jack Russell character. We went ahead and doubled over the hank around a glass in the baking dish, and we thought that would basically be like a bundt pan, and it worked pretty good. We also added the water to a lower level than the other pan so that it would hopefully not spread around as much. We want it to mix some but not get into where it's not supposed to. We also put the vinegar splodges around like we did with the rainbow one, and we figured out that that makes the colors lighter than when you dip dye it, so that's something I'm gonna keep in mind for the future when I do more dyeing projects. Then of course we had to jiggle it around, make sure the vinegar was getting into all the yarn, and then we went ahead and started adding our colors. And to add our colors, we just did the same as before with a little bit of warm water with some drops of the liquid food coloring and some goop from the goop food coloring. I also just realized right now that we didn't use as much purple for this one, so that's probably why it also was not as deep of a color as the other one that we dyed. But that's because we literally used this entire thing of purple. And you can see here that I was taking extra care to remove any excess liquid because the dye was going to be adding some, but we didn't want the yarn to dry out, so that's why we left the extra in there for the beginning of the process. And for this one, we decided to pour the yellow because we really wanted to make sure that it got stuck to that yarn and that there was no dye left. Well, there was a little bit, but we really wanted to make sure it stuck. And then we put the purple on the opposite side and the pink to go in between them to kind of stop that purpley yellow brown from happening when we didn't want it to. And I went back in with the spoon and kind of mixed the edges of the purple section and the pink sections to kind of get a little gradient going. I did do a little bit on the pink to yellow section, but I didn't want to do as much because I'm not aiming for orange. So if there was some orange, it's fine, but I didn't want it to be mixing too much to end up with orange. Now back to our galaxy yarn, you can see that the pink parts turned to purple because there's blue on them, and then the white parts that were left turned to blue. And you can tell that there's still a lot of blue dye in the water at the end, but this was a good color that I liked. So I decided to take the yarn out and put it to the side. But in true Chemnitz fashion, we are doing no dye left behind. So I ran upstairs and I grabbed some more yarn. We didn't even pre-soak it or anything. We just took the cake and slapped it in there. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, the best yarn is dyed with weird noises. So let him float. Floating. So we left the little cake to cook, and it started to suck up the blue dye through the capillary action. It made a different kind of like colorway than it would have if it was wet. And then while that was sitting there soaking up the dye, we went and put our tray bakes into the oven. And this was at just 200 degrees, I believe, and we left them in there for about an hour, checking every 20 minutes to make sure that the moisture level was sufficient so they didn't catch or burn. And this was the moment where I knew I'd get addicted to doing this. Woo! They look so cool. But that was not all. I made a loop and then just put a loose tie in the middle to get two ends that are purple. And see if this part stays whitish. And we're just gonna put it in and let it go. This one was also not pre-soaked. This was legitimately the last white piece of yarn that I had in my house. And I said I want to dye it. So we added some more purple and left it to dye itself. And then it was time to cut ties with the acrylic yarn. blue in there. Let's see what different one is different. That is still cool, even if it's just blue under them. So I unfortunately did not get the white flecks that I wanted, but I think I've found another way to try to do that in the future, so I'll let you know how it goes. Interesting. Okay, interesting. But here's a really cool hidden blue that we found in that hank. And then I went to go check on our dry Galaxy yarn, and this is what it looked like. It was still dripping blue, but it's becoming a lighter blue. So I let my husband know that it was on the stove while I went and took G home, and this is what it looked like when I came back. So I left it when I drove G home, and it did absorb the blue more than before. I think I'm gonna dunk it one more time, not to fully cover the pink, but just to blend it a little more, and then leave that one to drip. But this one, I really like how it turned out. And then this one seems to be pooling some pink on the bottom, so that's going to be interesting to see how that works up. I think this could be a good hat. And then the other ones, I just turned off the oven, and they are cooling off. And then tomorrow I will wash them all, make sure there's no dye left on them that's not fully integrated, and recake them, I guess, and maybe do a little swatching. Yeah, that is so cool. I'm going to be doing a lot more of this, I think. It's very easy with the food dye and vinegar, and cheap too, because you can get both from the Dollar Tree. You can get all of the supplies to like cook your dyeing stuff at the Dollar Tree. The only expensive part is the yarn itself, which you can sometimes thrift. And you don't even have to start with white. Like, you could start with a different lighter color and just play with it and see what happens. So I actually forgot that I thrifted this salad spinner. Sorry, it's kind of dirty, but I'm gonna wash the yarn after anyways. But it can get the extra water out with centrifugal force. And then if you need to stop it, you just press this. And apparently, oh, I already see some water going in there. So I'm gonna do that first, and then I'm gonna have these on their little janky drying setups. This one, I think I'm just gonna squeeze it and then let whatever drip onto the cookie sheet, because I don't think that this will hold up in here. I mean, I could try it. Oh my goodness, it is very unbalanced. But I do want to get water out of it, so I'm going to do this off camera. So here are what my Galaxy yarns kind of turned out like while they were drying. I literally have them set up over a baking sheet hung on a broom across 2 chairs. But, you know, whatever works, works. I like how this cake turned out, and I really want to try dyeing some more yarn like that again. Here's how the Chumbo yarn looks. Again, it's not as dark of a purple as I wanted, but it's pretty good. And then you can see the greenish rainbow yarn there too. I just dried them all out in the salad spinner, and then I washed them in some Dawn soap and water and left them to dry again. And then I had to borrow this Yarn Swift from my library and cake them all up. And I legitimately think that using the yarn winder is the best part of being someone who makes art with yarn. But here is what that finished cake looked like. You can see I did a little happy dance there, and it turned out so cool. Here's the blue one, which I did end up re-caking after I hanked it up again and let it dry because it wasn't fully dried in that cake form. And then G and I struggled to get this rainbow yarn on the Swift. For some reason it just wasn't expanding properly, but we eventually got it to work. Like I said before, it did turn out to be mostly green because of somebody, but I think it turned out pretty good anyway. I really like the blue and pink in there. And then again, like I said, I recaked this blue one. I turned into a hank after this and then back into a cake, but that's basically what it looked like recaked. And then I did the jumbo one, which again, the colors weren't as perfect as I wanted, but I still really liked how it looked, which is why I said then it was time for the last one. So I caked that one up as well, and I really liked how this one turned out, as you can tell by my reaction at the end, which was no. Look at that, bitch! And that was my very first yarn dyeing adventure. Special thanks to G for helping me with sourcing the materials and having the fun. This is one of the swatches for that blue yarn that I eventually turned into a hat. And I turned the failed rainbows into a pair of socks. And then I'm also making a pair of socks with the galaxy one, but that's not quite done yet. And since then, I've had some better success with rainbow yarns, and I've been dyeing a few other colors as well. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know if you've ever tried dyeing yarn in the comments, and subscribe if you'd like to see some more of my videos. Bye!